McClean, no support for all the anti-Irish abuse I've received. So this is Paul O'Hare writing up the story that was on James McClean's Facebook page. So James McClean made a post on Facebook about it. It is horrendous and nobody should be subjected to that, and people need to be held responsible for their words and actions. What leaves a sour taste, I have received more abuse than any other player during my 9 years in England. Death threats, bullets sent in the post, birthday cards, letters, etc. This is not a cry for sympathy, but one to ask the question, what's the difference? 12-year-old boys get arrested for posting racial abuse online to Zaha, again, rightly so. Has anyone ever been held accountable for mine? No. Have I ever had any abuse condemned by the media? Sky Sports, TalkSport, newspapers? No. In fact, quite the opposite. The slightest thing that I do that might cause offence to anyone is highlighted by them. I have seen some of my fellow Irish teammates post a black square in support of anti-racism, as well as posts condemning the discrimination, and again, rightly so. Have I ever seen any of them ever post a public condemnation of the discrimination I get, which funnily enough is a discrimination against them also? That would be a no. Does one kind of discrimination hold a higher bearing over another act of discrimination? I would say I'm confused, but that's the wrong word, because confused means not fully understanding something. In this case, it's quite clear. If you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. This is a complicated enough subject for us to get into at 9:02 this morning. His Irish teammates being called out over supporting Black Lives Matters. I wonder, it shouldn't be that hard for us to go back and find out who actually posted black squares and who particularly James McClean feels he has been left on an island by in his team. I wonder, is this something that Stephen Kenny has to address with James and his teammates when they are playing together, which is his first time ever to get the squad together. So that's certainly an issue that needs to be dealt with. And I think there's elements of the statement that it's clear not enough has been done for James McClean in the situation that he's found himself in. He has been isolated by the FA and by his club when he has taken a stance about the poppy, which is completely fair, and he has shown excellent leadership around the issue of the poppy. What he's done over the last year, though, is said that he has suffered more than anybody else. That's not a direct quote, but it's essentially what he's saying. His suffering is greater than every other footballer in England. And I don't know how he has the lived experience of every other footballer in England. But all of a sudden, he's actually putting himself against the players who are also receiving abuse, as opposed to joining with them. If you look back to the statement about Raheem Sterling, he was like, what Sterling's got is nothing compared to what I've got. And he's getting awards and stuff. It's like, wouldn't it be a better thing if he supported Raheem Sterling and if he supported McGoldrick unconditionally, as opposed to this conditional? It just seems like there's a condition there which is unnecessary, where McClean is saying that the anti-Irishness is okay, which it isn't, right? Which is, it's disgusting and it's despicable. But the anti-Irishness is okay at some level. And this stuff over here, like, I'm just as bad as him, as opposed to like all of this is horrific. And while we're fixing this, it might be possible for us to fix this other thing. It feels like there's a bit of nuance to the conversation that he's dragging us away from, and I'm just not sure that that interjection at the moment is as straightforward as he thinks it is.
Is it a timing issue here? Is this almost the worst time to be saying, look at my plight, look at how I've suffered, when everybody else is showing how they've suffered? Everybody in the Black Lives Matter movement has shown how they've suffered. Like, perhaps the timing could be better. Like, I think whenever this story comes up, I always appreciate how James McClean has got horrific abuse. Like, I think it's a good point you make, that actually comparing your plight to anybody else's is always going to be a slippery slope that you find yourself on, and it's probably never a wise decision. Like, it's something that you would have seen during this movement, for the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's pretty much always misguided to compare your plight with the Black Lives Matter plight. Like it's never a good move. But at the same time, what James McClean has gone through is horrific. Like I guess when it goes back to where does this all start with him, it's poppy protest time, isn't it? It kind of pulls the lid up on the undercurrent of sectarianism that still exists within British society. Is now the time to be talking about that? Like, I think is that the point you're making, that perhaps
I think it's fine to talk about it, but it's not to say mine is worse than everybody else, which is like the exact line is essentially saying I've had it worse than everybody else. I've received more abuse than any other player during my 9 years in England. It's like that's actually diminishing other people's abuse. That's saying that mine is more important. There's a self-centeredness around that, as opposed to saying I actually have a deep understanding of what's going on at the moment, and I'm 100% supportive of that. There's a separation of, there's a bit of whataboutery about it, and where that leads to is like, well, does that mean that James doesn't actually fully understand the racial abuse that black players have systemically every day, when actually you would consider James to be somebody who is sensitive to that? And to me, that would be the message coming out if you're James McClean going, I have a deep understanding of what these players are going through, and I hope that we can put a united front together and we can broaden the conversation out. And there's a way of doing that, I think, that doesn't involve going, I have it worse than everybody else.
It's a really interesting point. I think quite often with James McClean, there have been better ways for him to communicate. There have been better choices he could have taken in some of the stuff he's posted on social media. But again, I'll go back to this, that whenever it comes to James McClean, I will always accept that I will never be as close to my Irishness as James McClean, or I will never have suffered sectarian abuse the way James McClean did. And I always feel uneasy about ever questioning the motives behind that, or the time, even the timing behind that. I would feel uneasy criticizing. But at the same time, could there have been a place for him here to have empathized more with the Black Lives Matter movement in his public utterances? I'm not saying he's doing that privately. Perhaps there would have been. It's an interesting point that you raise, and it is possibly kind of a fall down in the way he communicates his point publicly. And another interesting point that you touched on there, and I know it was kind of a question that you just dropped out there, was what happens now with the Ireland camp? Is this something that does get addressed in the camp? Because as you say, it's probably quite easy to narrow down who posted black squares in their social media recently.
Well, he has people in mind. He's calling people out there, and they know who they are. So, they absolutely know who they are. It's also, McGoldrick is his teammate. This is off the back of that, you know? Look, yeah. He's in a leadership position. A lot of people rally behind him. A lot of people really respect the stance that he's taken on various things. And then there are obviously problematic things like posing in a balaclava, which, everybody responded to in a very negative way, and he got absolutely kicked for. But at the same time, this is an interesting conversation, and one that probably we need to spend a bit more time on. We've got to tell you what else is coming up here. So I've got to tell you what's on the OTB Sports app. Let's have a quick look for you this morning. You search OTB Sports in the App Store or on Google Play, and then you can personalise your own feed. There's a full, non-stop, 24-hour sports radio station. So if you ever need a respite and some top-quality sports content, click on the radio button. It's the best place to listen to us in the mornings as well, by the way. Video, endless hours of video to while away, which obviously you can cast to your TV as well. And the OTB Podcast Network, they're one of the biggest sports podcast networks in the world at this point. Again, up to 40 podcasts a week for you. So whatever your particular peccadillos are when it comes to sport, fear not, we've got them covered for you on the OTB Podcast Network.